Well, it's Friday morning now, so managed to get the nut off. I had to use a punch. As you can see, it's pretty well goosed up the nut. So what I'm going to try and do before I refit this is see if I can find a replacement nut. I think it's an M10 by 1.25 nut. This one, as I say, is absolutely fine, but that was so hard to get off. Basically had to put the strut in a vise, and then I put a punch at an angle, so you know I was putting a sort of tangential force on the nut, and eventually it started to break away. But yeah, so I'm going to see if I've got a spare nut of the same thread and pitch, and hopefully get that back on the car. Actually, I had a look on eBay last night. I'm used to seeing 2 drop links for about £10 or £11, but last night I was looking and like 1 drop link is about 15 quid. So sounds like COVID tax is still in effect. I mean, I don't know when the drop links went up, but I used to get a pair of drop links from a seed for £11. But curious. Same with brake pads. Brake pads are ridiculously expensive now as well. But well, that's market prices, I guess. So anyway, need to find a spare nut, hopefully. Well, I've looked everywhere for a 14125 pitch, but what I'm finding is that despite that being pretty well wrecked, once you push that on, it does get a decent bite. So the next time this comes off, it'll likely be because the drop link is knackered. So I'm just going to jack the car up just now and get the wheel off, put it underneath the sill, and see about reattaching the drop link. Well, safety first, and I've got a jack stand there. So here we are. So that's the upper mount point, and then there's the lower mount point. So we're now ready to install the salvaged drop link. Okay, so I've put the bottom one in, so it's a 14mm bolt. I put some copper slip on it as well. So now I need to do this one in here. So you can see there's quite a difference in height there. There's a good almost 2 inches, I would say, there. So I'm going to have to either bring this up, bring the hub up with the jack, or I'm going to have to bend this torsion bar, anti-roll bar, whatever you call it, to bring down the drop link. So I'll just see how much give I can introduce. I need to find a point to. I don't really want to use the drive shaft, but yeah, I should be able to bring that down without bringing the hub up to it. So the next thing I do is take this nut off. And then I'll need 2 hands to do this, but I will then attempt to move the anti-roll bar down. It might be that I can use this point here. Yeah, I think that point's probably going to be okay. Yeah, I think with 2 hands I should probably get that in there. Famous last words, but anyway, I'll give it a go, and if I don't do it, you'll soon know. Well, as the old saying goes, I probably should have put some hair around it, but I managed to get it in the hole. So it's at a slight angle there, but I'm sure once I start tightening the nut up, it'll be just fine. But yeah, I put the bar in here and I just moved it, and then it got to the point. Quite a bit of force actually on that, so it must be quite a strong anti-roll bar. Alright, so that's that tightened up. It's obviously now at the correct angle. What I would recommend for here is, if you've got a ratchet spanner, just give that a good old yerk up. And then on here I used a 6-sided 14mm, and although that nut is definitely quite chewed up, there's still actually plenty of the full hex at the back, so hopefully that's not going to be a problem. So that's that done. I'll put a little bit of copper slip over the top of that just to protect the threads, keep it as corrosion free as possible. And then I might see about fitting the clutch switch that I repaired, see how that goes. Right, it's time to look at refitting the clutch pedal switch. So this 17mm nut obviously locks it in position, and you get to that up there. You see that little plastic thing? That's the pad that goes against it, and then you see the hole above it. That's where you've got to get your hand into. So it's not the easiest thing to get into, because you've only got a fairly small area here, and then you've basically got to get way in there. So to get to that, or to give you more space, take off the crash panel. I don't know how much extra space that gives, but maybe it gives you this little bit here. I don't think it's probably not really necessary to take the crash panel off, but anyway, I've taken it off. So the tricky part is going to be pushing that down, keeping the clutch depressed, putting it in, and then try to get a nut onto the end of it. So that's the part we're at now. Well, if anybody thinks the brake pedal switch is worse, I have news for you. It's not compared to this. Well, what I'm doing is I'm lying on my back. I've got my shoulders in there. Lower back is kind of somewhere about here. I'm trying to push the clutch down with my right hand, then trying to fish this in with my left hand. Now, I'll give you a tip. It would be handy if you had fingers like chopsticks. That would be a good tip to start with. And then, so while you've dropped that down into the hole, you've then got to try and take your hand and slip the 17mm nut underneath it, which is a bit testing because well, you've got to push that clutch pedal down at the same time with your right hand, and time is of the essence. So if you've got good pectorals, that'll help you, but other than that, it's a fiddly bugger. Well, I don't know if this is going to help me or not, but I've done the wash and brush onto the clutch pedal, and that gives me the gap, but whether or not I can get in with my hand with this pole there remains to be seen. But let's try and see if that works. Well, the good news is that's definitely working. The fiddly part is you're relying on gravity to be able to thread that nut on, and that's the challenge at the moment. So, if you're knowledgeable about limbo dancing, and you see you got fingers like chopsticks, then yeah, you might get it on. Or if you can somehow hold the switch down and turn on the nut with your other fingers, then that's a handy skill to have for this task. But yeah, it's to say it's fiddly, it's yeah, it's bloody fiddly. Well, I'm pleased to say I have finally managed to get that bloody thing on, and then it's a bit of a bugger. I'm not left-handed, so that's part of my problem. I'm right-handed, so you're having to work with your left hand. What I ended up doing was having my left rib cage on the sill at the door, and then getting my hand up, and with the torch leaning against the footrest there, I could just see the thread. So I was holding the black switch that comes up and down, the little plunger, with my finger whilst trying to rotate the nut on, and then eventually it caught. But the number of times it caught but was not threaded correctly was ridiculous. So yeah, that's very fiddly. So I'm now going to see if my efforts were completely fruitless. Ah, that's okay. Right, so the proof of the pudding will be, I'm going to turn the key. I'll just make sure I'm in neutral. Yeah, I'm in neutral. It starts anyway. So, I don't know what the clutch switch is meant to be doing, but it's back in there, and it doesn't seem to be doing anything, so I'll see what happens when I push the clutch pedal down. Lights go off, lights come on, gears are going in, no problem. So I have no idea what the situation is with the clutch switch, but obviously I'm not going to bother replacing it, because all it seems to have done is introduced an error, which I've presumably fixed, and it's not actually doing what it's supposed to do, which is presumably cut the engine or the ignition until you depress it. So there we have it. So that's that. What else have I got to do? I need to see about touching in the paint here and there, and I think that's pretty much it. So it's a sunny Friday. It's now just gone midday. So anyway, feel free to subscribe and like if it piques your interest, and if you've got any questions, just ask in the comments. But anyway, hope you all have a good weekend, and I'll get tidied up and have a wee cup of tea.